Welcome to Growth Marketer Academy with Ryan and Andrea Eldridge. If there was a way to squeeze up to 64% conversions out of your marketing efforts, I bet that you would do just about anything to get it, right?
Just about anything. Maybe sell one of my kidneys.
So long as it's the second one, maybe?
Yeah.
Well, okay then. Good news. No medical procedures necessary.
Well, thank goodness. But if you want your landing pages to convert better, then you don't want to miss today's episode.
Because we are going to be covering conversion-focused squeeze page design.
Backed by science!
My favorite kind!
I'm Ryan Eldridge.
And I'm Andrea Eldridge.
And welcome to Growth Marketer Academy.
We are excited to have you join us today because in this episode, we are going to be talking about conversion-focused squeeze page design.
Backed by science!
I know.
That's my favorite part. I'm Ryan Eldridge, Chief Strategist at Squirrel Digital Marketing.
And this is Andrea Eldridge, Creative Director at Squirrel Digital Marketing. And if you're joining us again, welcome back. If you're new to us, then just straight up welcome and welcome y'all.
Yeah. Today we're going to be covering 8 actionable tips to optimize squeeze page design, leading to better conversions.
Well, I think we need to start off with the elephant in the room, though, here. What is up with the name squeeze page?
I know.
It sounds obscene.
It does, doesn't it? Like you're just kind of squeezing those prospects. You're trying to just squeeze, but it's not really their money you're squeezing out of them. You're kind of squeezing their contact info. That's really what you're doing.
So basically, it's designed to squeeze a visitor's email address from them by offering something valuable in return.
Yeah.
And so what would cause someone to opt in and give up their email address?
Well, it could be something like an exclusive offer or service, or it could be something like trying to give them something they want, like information. That's probably your most common thing is like, get my checklist, get my
ebook or webinar.
Get my special offer and give me your email address, and you can have that. So,
and commonly the way that you see these squeeze pages is they show up as a pop up or a pop over. What's the difference, by the way?
Well, pop up is like a whole new window, and it's sort of that lost its awesomeness.
Yeah, I think we all hate that idea, but yeah, okay.
Or pop over. It's like when your whole screen kind of grays out, and you see this little box show up, and it's kind of like in the page itself, and you can't get past it. And then
it's basically what you're saying is that we marketers just got creative when pop-ups became so annoying that we just became even slightly more obtrusive there to your user experience in order to give you an offer that we think you'll want.
Yeah, ultimately, marketers ruin everything. Yeah. That's pretty much the premise there.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'll try to move on with my shattered ego. So they can also appear as a sidebar or a header bar. Yes. They can appear on a landing page or your homepage or really any page where you're basically going to show an offer that you're trying to send to them, and that basically gets that person to give you their email address so that you can send them the offer that they want to see.
Yep.
But ultimately, they only have one purpose, and that is to collect email addresses.
In most cases, sometimes it could be phone numbers, depending on on what kind of lead you're trying to generate.
Makes sense.
So if you're looking just for phone numbers or you're looking for email, but most common it's email, especially when you're talking about internet marketing. That's really what we're kind of looking for, because email marketing is still sort of the leader in terms of generated nurturing leads.
Yeah, I mean, I think that ultimately when it comes down to it, what you're looking to do here is to get this interested potential prospect on a path that you can then continue to nurture them, to have a longer period of time with them, send them direct marketing messages that are either designed to sell your product potentially, but also offer additional information, ensconce yourself in their world as a provider of useful information.
Because if you're doing it through Facebook or through a messenger type stuff, the problem is you're paying constantly to keep in contact with those customers. But if they give you their contact information, now you can constantly be in touch with them without having to pay each time you want to say something to them, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, so the two most important factors if you're going to have a successful hook and lure, I guess, to get your visitor's email address. It's going to be obviously what you offer in exchange for that email address. Yeah. It has to be something that the user wants and is going to be motivated enough to provide you with their email address. You know, we all, I think, these days think of like, it's just your email address, who cares? But people really don't like spam and they don't like full inboxes, and it's a constant source of irritation. And so that is valuable to people, the idea of giving up their email address in exchange for something. It has to be something that they want.
Yeah, and if it's exchanging the email address for like a newsletter subscription, that doesn't really work, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you might get a few people that are here and there that are big fans and they want to hear everything you have to say, but in general, you want to make sure that your offer is something valuable enough that they're willing to take the risk that you might be a spammer and they might have to deal with you later. So you just want to make sure that offer is good enough there.
And then obviously your squeeze page design itself is going to be the second most important factor, and they're almost equal because if you offer something great but you do it in such a way that it turns off your visitor, or they don't even notice it, or they can squeeze right past it. Not to use squeeze again in the wrong terminology there, but they can go right past it. They're not going to even really pay attention to what it is you're offering. So,
I mean, just to give you an analogy of the real world, because I just love this kind of stuff. So it's kind of like if your squeeze page design, think of it like you could have the best offer in the world and have a crappy design and still not convert at all, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like if you're a dude. You love this part. And you're a dude.
I'm already looking at you like, wait, where's this going?
And you've got like maybe you're super muscular and you're good looking. I mean, your offer is just like, hey, check this out. You go to a bar and you're like, yeah, but you're wearing like the leisure suit Larry type outfit. You know, your design isn't really great. You're not going to convert. It's just not going to happen.
You'd have to convert only those truly motivated to get in on your offer, to get past that leisure suit. Yes, that's true. Okay. So let's talk about, speaking of leisure suits, when squeeze page design goes wrong. And that would be, so like, I know we've all seen these, like flashing arrows, brightly colored text, possibly even worse, those ones that actually try to trick visitors into giving up an email address. Those are bad news. That's going to give a bad rep to your page, to your brand, just all around. And honestly, these sorts of tactics, they're overused, they're not effective, and your visitor is going to see it just like they're going to see a commercial. And like I said, they're going to just go right past it.
Yeah.
Now, done right, I know we mentioned this statistic earlier up on, but if you do it right, a squeeze page can yield conversions as high as 64%.
And where did you get that stat from?
Viperchill.com. But it was a study where it was a specific, they redesigned a page and they looked at the difference between utilizing a well-designed squeeze page in order to opt in for an offer. And then they offered the same offer just in the course of a web page. And they studied the differences in their web page conversions. And so
64%.
It was an actual legit study that said, okay, so if we don't utilize a squeeze page, or we use a squeeze page, but it's not designed with these optimization tools, how many emails do we get? And how much contact information are we given? And then they did it. They optimized it and just gauged what the difference was. Nice. 64%. That's pretty awesome.
If you guys want to see that study, you can head over to Squirrel Digital Marketing /blog. Check out the squeeze page design backed by science blog post, and you can see that. Or check out the podcast show notes, and we'll have that in there for you.
So really, I mean, what this comes down to is that design does dictate a large portion of your conversion success.
Yes. So
let's get into some of these design elements. I'm pretty sure we've got 8 of them today. So our first one is kind of the first thing with most advertising, which is the headline that entices visitors to stay. That's important, like we said, because you need them to be willing and interested enough to read what you're offering them.
Yep.
If you can't get them by first glance to even stick focally on your squeeze page, you're not going to get past that point no matter how great it is.
So it's essentially your value proposition where you're kind of saying this is what's cool about this offer, or you're essentially trying to place yourself in a conversation that prospect is likely having in their head already. So a really great headline tends to be questions. If you just ask questions they're likely already asking themselves. You want to grab their attention, and then you want to really just kind of show the value of the offer. But you don't want to be into this big, long. You could probably write 200 words on your offer and just give them all the details and just be like, oh my gosh, as soon as they're done reading this, they're going to freaking love it. They're never going to finish it. So you need to be short and sweet with what you're trying to say. Yeah. I'm not going to use the bar analogy again. I was about to.
Well, thank you.
But I'm not going to.
Thank you for resisting that urge.
Yeah,
okay.
You're welcome.
So one option here when you're trying to come up with a short but powerful headline would be to focus on benefits rather than features. You kind of mentioned this. So let's give an example. I know your favorite examples always involve cameras, and I always involve pets. So since I'm giving the example here, we're going to go with pets.
All right, let's do it.
Let's say that you are a dog trainer and you're offering a dog training ebook. So instead of saying like easy tips or expert guidance, the things that you're giving in your book, what you want to think about is why someone would be looking for a dog training book and phrase it in such a way that gives the benefits to them. So this would be something like turn your problem child into a good dog, or get your dog to come the first time you call, something that is probably irritating that person who's going to be looking for your solution.
You're essentially calling out their problem and presenting it to them. That's really what you're doing.
And obviously you want to give a very clear value proposition.
Yeah. And the more detailed, the better. So if you said something like...
how do you be detailed and short at the same time in a headline? I think maybe you go into more detail maybe in your copy.
If you said, for example, say one of your examples was get your dog to come to you the first time you call, right? So if you wanted to really put a real emphasis on that proposition, you might say, get your dog to come to you the first time you call within 3 lessons, right? And now you're like, whoa, okay, that's something I could do. It's really specific and really kind of clear. Okay, well, I don't have to spend 6 weeks trying to figure out how to get Fido to do what I want. I can just go ahead and get this done.
Well, and I think where that would make a lot of sense would be, the next piece is making sure that your sub-headline supports that claim, either with data or with additional details. So that would be a good sub-headline, would be that within 3 weeks, or in 3 weeks or less.
But a lot of marketers, they tend to have a real problem trying to identify what a benefit is versus what a feature is. And the way that I used to do it when I was in sales, when I used to sell shoes, was a feature.
You that was shoes, by the way. I know you kind of spoke pretty low there.
A feature is what it is, right? And a benefit is what it does. So if you talking about the feature of your dog training program is something like it's a 6-week course. And that it's $19.95, and that you guarantee success. Those are all features, right?
Yeah.
But a benefit would be something like you're saying is get Fido to come to you the first time you call, or stop having Fido.
Stop counter surfing. Stop. Yeah. All of the. So you think of something that your product gives as a benefit.
Yeah.
And that, so ultimately, if you're brainstorming benefits, you can ask yourself a couple questions. One would be, what problem does your product or service fix for your customer in particular? Or what issues might cause a customer to seek out your product or service? Yeah. And then you can kind of frame your benefit statements in a way that resonates better with your potential prospect.
To get a slightly more complicated, you generally want to describe what is considered the before state, the before they solve their problem. So that's where you're saying get Fido to stop counter surfing or whatever. You're kind of giving them a description of their before state, where they are now, and then once you show them what solution you've got, the vehicle to solve their problem, then you can show them what the after state looks like, right? You can start talking about further on down the page things like maybe a picture of you petting the dog and saying how much more peaceful life is with the dog, that you can have Thanksgiving and not worry about all your food getting stolen from the counter, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So another thing to consider when you're coming up with your headline is the use of power words. Now, these are words that are basically designed to elicit an emotional response from your reader. And it's like there's 2 basic emotions that most people utilize when they're using power words. One is competition and the other is fear. Mm-hmm. So competition would be something like, X number of smart online marketers have I said that wrong, but this number of smart online marketers have a head start. So, basically referring to the number of people who've already gotten this information.
Are you tired?
So you're missing out.
Are you tired of all the yuppies at the dog park with their little poodles that are so well trained? Don't you want you can kind of play up the competition that way, right?
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense, I guess, to a certain extent. But, the idea that everyone but you has gotten this benefit. And so, or those that are successful have done something different. And this is the difference, in what you're offering. So, so that's one power word emotion that we try to evoke. But fear of loss would be the other one. So kind of that don't be left out. This would be something where, like maybe a free membership that your competitors are using is that drives more sales for their department is going to be
a limited time offer.
Yes.
Can also be one, or a coupon that expires at a certain time, or that kind of thing, or there's a limited quantity of something that you're trying to sell.
Kind of the Black Friday mentality of that, doorbuster offer. It gets them in with the sense of urgency of they don't want to be the only one that missed it.
Yeah.
If you're looking for power words, Smart Blogger actually has a great list of power words. We have a link to it in the blog post that we have on our site, at squirreldigitalmarketing.com. If you just look for the blog post about squeeze design, it's on here.
Or look at the show notes.
Okay, so once you've got your headline done, your next thing that you're going to be talking about is the copy itself. Mm-hmm. So the thing that you're looking for here, squeeze pages in general should not be like every possible piece of information you can imagine. You're looking for scannable copy, minimal amount of text. You want to explain the benefits of what you're offering with concise, like bullet points, numbered lists, things like that. We have one of our science things here, which I'm super excited about. So studies have shown that readers follow an F-shaped pattern when scanning pages online. So they basically do a horizontal movement across the top of the page. They do a shorter secondary horizontal movement just below the original, and then they kind of just scan vertically down the left side of the page. And so you want to put your copy in these like visual hotspots of this squeeze page so that they're easy to see quickly. Again, like they're not going to spend a lot of time on each one. These are like visual scanning patterns. So you want to kind of put your quick and easy and really easy to see and quickly get the information right in those centralized areas.
And if you ever watch people's movements online, their behaviors in general, humans we're always trying to avoid death. I know this sounds really weird, but we always try to do things and be as efficient as possible because at any moment we could die. and so when we look at a blog post, one of the first things we'll do is we'll read the headline. Is this going to be worth my time? Maybe if we're not quite sure, we'll read a little bit of the subheadline. And then we'll quickly scroll down to the bottom of the page. We won't even read the rest of the blog. How long am I going to have to read this thing, right?
How much time do I have to commit to this?
So they'll scroll all the way down to the bottom. And if they go, okay, well, that doesn't seem so bad, they'll scroll back up to the top. But they still won't read it. Now they're just going to kind of scan through it real quick. And this is where your bullet points come in. You can just kind of highlight certain things, give some boldness to certain key points so they can kind of scan through. And then they're going to finally go, okay, now I'm ready to invest a little time in figuring out what this person's actually trying to say. So keep those things in mind.
Really what I get out of this is that the less you have on this page, the better, because the faster they can get through it, the more likely they are to stick with it and actually read what you want them to read and potentially give you their email address or phone number.
What I like to say is I learned this from Donald Miller from StoryBrand. He says that if you look at a website or a squeeze page or a landing page and you can't pass the caveman test, then you've done something wrong. And the caveman test is you need to be able to look at it and within 5 seconds get the general gist of what it's trying to say. You have to be like, right?
Got it.
Right? If you can do that, you're winning. But if you can't pass the caveman test, that means you've got too much stuff going on. You need to pare that thing down.
Okay. So once you've got your copy figured out, at least in terms of making it brief and concise, the next thing, the step number 3, is engaging visuals. So people are drawn to images. We all generally know that, but there is another statistic about it. Basically, a majority of people, 65% to be exact, are visual learners. So they choose to gravitate, or they naturally gravitate to visuals and images in terms of having information stick with them longer.
Yeah. Plus, if you've just got a bunch of text written on your squeeze page, even if it's really good and engaging copy, you need to break that up somehow. You need to give us some break between the words, and maybe, I mean, you always hear the statistic that a picture is worth 1,000 words.
I don't think that's a statistic, by the way. That's just kind of a general colloquialism. But yes, that's absolutely.
But if you want to have 1,000 words on your webpage, just throw a picture up there. Boom, done.
So obviously, you want your image to be and images are engaging. It's just something that our brains naturally can glean a lot of information from, but they can also kind of more easily place themselves in the position of whatever you're using your image to. It can elicit emotions more quickly than words. It can elicit response from your user. So really important for you to utilize images properly. The ideal image would show your product in action if that's feasible for your product. And ideally associate your product with an emotion. So like, for example, let's say you're offering an ebook. You could include maybe one or so of the cooler graphics directly on your squeeze page so the person can see what it is that they stand to be getting if they give you their email address. You can basically preview your value to your reader. And if it's something where you've got a product that's usable by a person, so you're selling an actual physical thing instead of a service, or, well, even I guess a service, if you could present that service, it's going to be harder in some cases, if it's an accounting software, for example. But let's say that you're selling...
let's say you're selling HVAC repair, right? You might take a picture of an HVAC unit, right? And that's really boring. Just a picture of but you're saying, well, this is what we're going to fix. I want to, right? Yeah. But really what you want to show is a person, right? You could show either the repairman next to the HVAC unit where he's kind of fixing it, but he's super happy about it. You could show somebody in their nice, comfortable home, feeling comfortable, right? Yeah. So you'd want to give them images like that. Yeah. And people really like to look at pictures of other people. Yes. We learned this through running Facebook ads is one of our brands has a lot of cartoon characters in it. And we thought, whoa, they're totally going to identify with cartoon characters. Well, the thing is when we started using real people, our conversions went up because they were able to identify themselves in that picture, either from their before state or their after state, or they just kind of like, I kind of want to be as happy as that person, or I want to be like that person. Yeah.
It's more relatable than a static image of an item or in this case, an animated graphic. We do see a lot of animated ads these days. But when it comes to conversions, and particularly for a squeeze page, using a picture of a real person is just generally shown to be better. And
it tends to be more trustworthy. Anybody can put up a cartoony picture and do a kind of a funny little video and stuff. But until you really know there's someone behind it, you think maybe there's just some, dude in his basement that created this weird offer to steal my credit card information.
That's true. It's true. So it's more trust building, more relatable. The other interesting thing that you can do if you have a person on the screen is there are cases where you can see that the image itself has the person looking with their gaze in the direction of the
product or the opt-in.
The opt-in. Yeah. Basically, you can use a person's gaze in the image to subconsciously guide your visitors to important elements on your page, like your opt-in. It's interesting because it just happens almost naturally. Like you're like, what are they looking at? And your eyes gravitate to where the person in the picture is looking. So we have an example on the blog post on our website. And it's just kind of remarkable because you really do just look right there where that person's looking. Yeah. So, but it shows the product in action. You want to basically show the optimum person that's relatable. So I'm not saying like you want to use your product in the hands of some supermodel. You want it to be like the best version of your customer, you know what I mean? Yeah. That is using your product and having a great time about it.
and for goodness sake, stay away from stock photos because everybody knows everybody's seen that one with the dude with the computer and he's got his thumb up and he's like, yeah, I'm having such a great time. And and it just
over the top,
it looks fake.
Stock form pictures are probably even worse than not using a person at all because it's just such a turnoff for the viewer who's seen them so much. It's like the worst case infomercial that you've seen late at night where you're like, oh my God, seriously, I don't think I'm ever going to buy a ShamWow anymore because wow, that guy like seriously freaked me out and I'm just done, right?
But if you're going to spend money on a like a service or something that's going to get you stock photos, things like that, you may as well spend the $100 and just get an amateur photographer to come and take some photos of your product or services or even people in your organization. They'll get some exposure because they're going to be able to take pictures and get a credit for it. And you're going to get somebody who's able to do something on the cheap and more customized. So
yeah. So the other thing that you can do in this place on a squeeze page, so if you feel like you need more information than a few words and an image can convey, you can utilize video on a squeeze page. So this is great for a product that you know needs just more information to be given. It's actually perceived by the viewer to have higher value than static images or text alone. It can be consumed passively, but it really gives you more time to educate your potential opt-in user more elaborately with more details. It gives you more time to establish trust, show your product in use, potentially give some testimonials. I mean, it gives you a lot more time, provided you don't go too long. I mean, obviously, you still only have this person's interest for probably, I don't know, 30 seconds to 2 minutes.
But video kind of, it allows us again to kind of have that relationship with whoever it is that's selling something. I mean, if everything could be sold by copy and pictures alone, when you walked into a retail store, it would just be pictures and words. And then you'd pick up the items you want and leave. And maybe some of us would appreciate and prefer that. But really, that's why they have salespeople there. So they can talk to you, they can get you all hyped up. Oh my gosh, this is the greatest thing ever. And that kind of energy and excitement. And they can say more in 20 seconds than they could, than someone could consume in 20 seconds reading on the page.
Yeah. And the bonus here with a video is that it can actually lead to a boost to your SEO for that page. I guess for a couple of reasons. It increases the time spent on page and on your site. So if someone just happens upon your landing page or your website based on an offer or an ad that you included or a link through from a pay-per-click, and they stay on your page longer, that's beneficial to your SEO than if they just bounce back after a couple seconds. And this, in turn, signals search engines to rank your site as more relevant to those search terms.
Even though Google kind of says page time on page isn't a factor, they really talk more about jumping from page back to the search engine results. But I know that I've watched our analytics, and the longer the time on page, the higher we rank. So even if Google won't admit it, there certainly seems to be some sort of connection. Maybe not a direct causation, but certainly a correlation of time on page to your ranking going up.
All right. So the next thing, we're on step number 4, is now we need to talk about your opt-in. This is the place on your squeeze page where where you basically are providing the field for the customer to offer or give you the information that you're asking for, whether it's their email address, their name, their phone number, whatever you're asking them to provide. So the first step is you need to get your visitor to notice the opt-in. So we would term that a call to action. You need to use a strong call to action. And usually this is something involving the copy itself on the box. So like if you've noticed usually when you see a squeeze page, you'll have the image and the copy and the headline and the information about what it is. But somewhere on that page is going to be a field. It's a field that you have to enter information in. And you want your visitor to notice that there's a field that they need to provide information in.
Just visually separating it from the rest of the page, putting it in another, like a grayer box or something with a shadow around it, something that makes it kind of stand out, that this isn't just more information that you can passively consume. This is the point of this. And so she's showing me an example of Brian Dean in his page. And if you go to the show notes, you'll see it. Or if you go to the blog post on Squeeze Page Design, you'll see it. And Brian Dean, he essentially on his Squeeze page does a sort of like almost like a pop-up. What do we call it? A pop-in? Pop over. Where the rest of the page grays out, and then boom, up shows up his, hey, you want to get 25,000 new visitors per month. And it's just very clear. Here's what it's going to be. Here's the headline, and here's your email address and a button with a call to action that says get the ebook. And
that button, that get the ebook offer, would be your call to action. On this squeeze page in particular, it's a different color than the rest of the page. So visually, it's the one thing on the page that is a brighter color than all of these muted background colors. And the text is very brief and concise, but it's clear what you're doing. So it says, get the ebook. That's it. That's all that says on this button. But the button's orange, and the rest of the page is done in these like lime green and gray and whites. So it pops visually. You see right away that ultimately what you're asking them to do, that's the first thing the person who sees that page is going to see, is this button that says, get the ebook. And then right above that is the white text that says email address. Makes it pretty clear that that's all you need to provide is your email address. And then from there, you're going to go in your F pattern of your visual reading again. You're going to look at the top headline. You're going to look at the subheadline. And you're going to go, okay, so I get it. I do want 25,000 more visitors per month. And so I'm going to do this. So Now, placement becomes an issue if you go with a longer squeeze page. Now, some companies and services, some businesses choose to do a longer squeeze page in order to give more information, more details, more features. This can be helpful if you've got a more complicated process, something that your customer is, you're trying to give them more detail without it being visually overwhelming by shoving a bunch of text in one place. So you may choose to design your squeeze page in such a way that it goes on for longer than just a single small box, which could potentially cause some of your text to be what we would term below the fold. The fold would mean if they have to scroll down to see any of the remainder of the page. And so the main thing to be concerned about here on your squeeze page is you want your opt-in above the fold if possible. If you hide that opt-in, it confuses your visitor. You want it to be really clear what it is that they're doing. So even if you want to offer additional details below that fold, that's fine, but make your opt-in above the fold. If you do decide to put it below the fold, then you're going to want to make sure and plant some sort of visual cue. That would be like an arrow indicating that they need to scroll down. But again, I would say that that's still not going to be as successful as if your opt-in is above the fold.
And if you've done any studies on specifically how people browse a web page, right, and where you were talking about the F design and stuff, most people actually don't scroll at all. If they come over to the page from an ad or from a specific other page, there's already kind of set a little bit of tease the offer a little bit, and then you suddenly land on a squeeze page. You don't tend to need to give a ton of detail to everybody. So a lot of people will just opt in right away. And so you want to give them the ability to do that as quickly as possible. And then if they want more information, you put that below the fold so they can kind of scroll down, get more information, and they know they can scroll back up. And some places like Basecamp did a really great squeeze page design comparison where they put the call to action in several different places further on down the page. In order to let that person not have to go all the way back up to the top just to opt in for the offer.
So in addition to opt-in placement, you also want to pay a lot of attention to how much you're asking your visitor to do. So really the key here is you can't get greedy. You don't want to ask for their billing address, their phone number, their email, the more you ask for, the less likely they're going to be to do any of it. They're just going to be like, it's just too much effort.
In general, you want to consider each new line of information you're trying to get from your customer is going to decrease your conversions by up to 30%. So if you're asking for first name, last name, company name, phone number, billing address, email address, just consider that's just not going to convert at all because, oh my gosh, I don't want to fill out all this information. I'll come back another time, and then they never come back. So ask for the minimal amount of information you need to actually provide them what they want. And then you can always follow up later. If you've got their email address, now you can kind of send them a survey form. Hey, thanks for opting in for my offer, blah, blah, blah. Now I need to know your name and the name of your company and the size and how many employees you have, that kind of stuff. You can always get that later. But if you're asking for too much up front, you're not going to even get the email address. Then you can't follow up with them. They're not a lead, and it's just a waste of time. So as minimal as possible. We even try not to ask for names. We just try to get that email address. And once we get it, we can go back and ask them for their name. Yeah,
it's true. So kind of an interesting topic as we're talking about opt-ins. I've noticed a lot of opt-ins these days are like negative opt-ins where you get the whole I want to save money or no, I hate saving money. I was just curious, what do you think about those?
I hate those. They're so passive aggressive and just annoying. When I first started seeing them, where it's like, hey, what's the matter? You don't like ice cream? No, I hate ice cream. It was kind of funny, but now it's just so irritating. Neil Patel does this a lot, and every time I see it, I picture Neil Patel's smug little face, and I just come on, Neil. You don't have to do that. I'm not opting in because of some other reason. It has nothing to do with me not liking monkeys or whatever it is.
And don't treat me like an idiot. I feel like it's demeaning personally. I think it's one thing when it was done to be funny, and I think you can tell the difference when it's done to be funny versus done to be passive aggressive, like you said. And too many people have put it on their page in such a way that it's passive aggressive. So I would say stay away from the negative opt-in.
Or worst case scenario, if you absolutely have to do it, just run a test. See what happens. I mean, if you run an A/B test and you find your conversions are up because people are responding better to your negativity, awesome. But I have a feeling you'll quickly learn that that's a bad way to insult your potential leads on their way out.
Or maybe you do it right and you find the magic sauce tool. I mean, we're all about the A/B testing, but I would say if you're just starting out, maybe don't do that now. Okay, so step number 5 for your squeeze page design, you want to work here a little bit at establishing credibility. You know, you're very likely working with people who have had very little experience with your product or service. If you've never interacted with them enough to have their email address or their information, then this is probably one of the first things they've seen about you and your product. So you need to establish some trust. If the visitor doesn't trust you, they're going to worry that you're using their email address for spam or you're going to sell their name to a list. So let's talk about social proof. Yeah. Social proof is one easy, quick way that you can establish trust. And
my wife is absolutely huge on social proof. We were in France, and we were trying to find some place to eat. And we'd only been dating for about 4 weeks, and she was
I was like 18 years old.
Yeah, and she was. You were 19. Thank you.
Sorry,
not 18. Right. She was 19. So we were walking down the street, and I was like, "Well, where are we going to eat?" And she's like, "Well, I don't know, but this place looks really crowded." And it was a Chinese restaurant in France. And I was like, really? We're going to eat Chinese food in France? It was really crowded, so it was probably good. And
Well, I think anybody who's been in a new city, you've walked down the street before, and if it's like a row of restaurants, and you have one restaurant that's got a line outside the door, and another 6 restaurants that have like 2 people in it apiece, you're going to the place with the line outside the door, right? You're not going to go, I'm going to go adventuresome and try something new. That's social proof.
That's social proof in action. And so you can do the same thing on your page. Russell Brunson does something really cool. During his last book launch, he was showing how many people were purchasing the book at the same time that you were on the squeeze page itself. And so it'd be like, Jane just got blah, 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 and Joe just got da, 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 and this guy. And it not only showed that they bought the book, but they also what offers and the extra add-on offers they were getting too. So it kind of created this competition, a little bit of like, whoa, other people are here.
Fear of missing out.
Yeah, and it made the page feel like it was alive rather than feeling like
static and just
I'm the only fool in the world that's ever seen this offer and is actually going to trade my email address for this. Yeah. So you want to be able to, and so one of the examples is we have in the blog post where we say sign up and join 11,560
happy subscribers, yes,
and that kind of stuff. But you can also put a little picture of a person that has used the product or service and have them write it like a nice little review of your product or service. And the reason why you want to have a picture is because you want to try to make it kind of relatable.
We're kind of merging 2 different options here. So the first option that you mentioned was what we would term wisdom of crowds. Yeah. So that's basically saying that's where he was saying you sign up to join our 11,560 happy subscribers. It says it basically plays with your visitors' inherent desire to conform to the group mentality, to join the herd. They don't want to be left out, but they also can see that so many people have done it. I will too.
So it must be safe.
And it gives kind of, this sense of safety and inherent. So the large number gives you that wisdom of crowds benefit. Option 2 is the testimonial.
Yes.
So that's a second round, and it's not to say that you can't use them both, but that's a second way to get some social proof. So that would be individuals who've already provided their email address and found value in their offer. If you've done a follow-up survey and asked like, hey, did you get any use out of it? And you've gotten commentary back, or you have a customer that has been satisfied with your work. What Ryan was mentioning there was using an image of that person definitely humanizes it, particularly if it's clear that it's not a stock image. So don't fake this, guys.
Everyone has a cell phone. Ask them to do something on video or through a Skype interview, something like that. So again, I can kind of see that there's a real person here, and don't make them super awesome when in a perfect studio with excellent lighting, because that just looks fake.
It does. And it looks like you staged it, and then they don't trust what you're saying. So, but if you're just referring to someone with text alone, you do want to give whatever details that person is willing to allow you to share. So you want to include their name, relevant details of that person. So like one of the examples that I gave in the blog post itself was Dr. John Smith, veterinarian, ABC Pet Hospital, Kansas City. Like, it makes it so that the reader who sees that goes, well, if I didn't think it was real, I could call up ABC Pet Hospital in Kansas City and see if there really is a Dr. John Smith. Like, it just lets your brain make that little connection, like, that's verifiable information, so it must be real. Like, I could totally check to see if that vet hospital exists.
I would love somebody to call Dr.
But
John
you
Smith.
wouldn't, but you could. And I think that in general, like, it gives that sense of like, they wouldn't be lying and like make all these details. Cause like, seriously, like that would really make them look terrible. And so it must be real. You know what I mean? And you never check, but because you could, and it gives you enough detail that you could verify it, it gives you a much stronger social proof. So, that's basically social proof on the
social proof.
Testimonial side there. Trust symbols also build credibility. So this basically, you can give proof that your brand has had public recognition. So this would be things like featured in the New York Times or see us on Good Day Sacramento. This is where, the person can see that it's not just other Joe Schmo people, but they were legit. Your product or your brand has been legit enough to be on the news or on a show or featured in an article.
Recognized by another trusted source.
Yes. So, and ideally, if you're going to do this visually on a squeeze page, you can add the logos from those recognized institutions. It makes it quicker and faster for the person to instantly realize who you're saying talked about your product or supports your brand in one way, shape, or form. So industry players, if you can have industry players saying that your product or service has value, it gives a lot of credibility to that person who's just for the first time seeing your page.
Yeah. There's an example of that in the blog post for Tim Ferriss's squeeze page, where he's got Amazon and Wired and New York Times. That they're all on his, showing that these are all trusted sources that are also saying that Tim Ferriss is awesome.
Yeah, it's another example of a really well done squeeze page because it uses a lot of these different factors of social proof. He uses a listing from Amazon where it says 1,500 plus 5-star reviews. So he's using the crowd function as well as saying, don't miss out on the number of other people who are doing this. Everybody loves me. And then he's got, some quotes from Wired in New York, like you said, New York Times, that are showing, these publications, and then he's got an actual quote from a person, and yet he does it all with relatively minimal copy because you can see really easily and quickly the logos of the, these instantly recognizable logos are done in a brighter color than the text itself. So you instantly see Amazon, Wired, New York Times. If you want to choose to read further, you can, but the text itself is a little bit more muted in color, and so it kind of fades somewhat into the background, so it doesn't feel as textually overwhelming as if all other words were in the same context. So that's a really good one as an example of social proof.
So next one is number 6, embrace white space. So
this is one of your favorites.
Yeah.
I know, it's all about like less is more.
Yeah, a lot of people will just try to cram as much stuff as possible above the fold. They'll put logos and phone numbers and squeeze page and call to actions and benefit statements and all this other stuff. And the problem is it gets so overwhelmingly crowded that somebody just goes, okay, I can't do this today. So
what was funny actually is when we first started way, 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 way back in the day, and we were doing flyers in papers. I remember that you would get these inserts in the newspaper when it arrived, and some of those you would just be like, wow, Mr. Plumber, there is no way I'm going to read an entire 8x10 12 font page full of writing of you selling me testimonials and how amazing your product is and how much it's going to save me. Like, no, I just don't have the time. And you'd throw it away. Yeah. You wouldn't even save it for later. But people would actually save our flyers because they were minimal. They had just the right amount of information. They had an image that was engaging and relatable. And
clear call to action.
Clear call to action. And they would keep these flyers on the refrigerator for years. And it was crazy. And that, I think, was my first really real obvious showing of how important white space is to just avoid that mental clutter. You get instantly overwhelmed when there's too much to see and do on a page. And your instinct is to go away from it. You're just like, oh, God, that's just too much. Yeah. And you leave. So you're not going to get that person to stay no matter how important that information is.
If you cram a lot of really important information into a small space, they're not going to even get the important information. So you got to pick out the most important information and only use that. And for the people who want more, the people that are going to research, they're going to seek out that more information. Put that further down the page. But don't slam everyone with it right up front because it's just going to be too much. So you want to
turn off people. Yeah.
Give yourself some space, a little bit of breathing room.
So reduce the clutter. That white space makes a page more aesthetically pleasing. It also leads to better increased readability, improved user focus, greater comprehension of your offer itself.
Yeah.
So another interesting statistic.
More science.
The average human can hold 7 plus or minus 2 items in their short-term memory at a time.
Yeah.
So if you give them 12 important points, they're not going to remember them. So, and as I say this, I realize that our podcast today has 8 points. So try to go into that +2, guys. But I trust you. I think you can handle it. But that's kind of an interesting number to keep in mind. So you want to look for that not going over 7 in terms of the things that you want them to notice, absorb, and hang on to.
Yeah. And just keep in mind that the more choices, the more things you're trying to get that target to do, the less likely they are to do anything at all. And so you want to just really limit down what kinds of information you're trying to give them and just whittle it down to the most important pieces, and that's it.
And less choices really does make it easier for you to guide that visitor to focus, decide, and act and do what you're asking them to do than if you give them too much stuff to focus on, too much stuff to be like, oh, well, I never even thought about blah, blah, blah that's over here on the side corner. Now I'm going to go look into that. Like, you just focus, very focused. And white space helps you do that. All right, so number 7, you want to match the design of your squeeze page to the traffic source. So if that's a pay-per-click ad, for example, that's brought them over, you want to use very similar text. You want to use the same words, you want to make sure that whatever got them to this page in the first place feels consistent, so they don't feel like, wait a second, I was coming over for this, and all of a sudden I'm seeing something entirely different.
Yeah.
So ultimately you want to carry over elements, wording, image, color choices, all of these things. If you can carry over as many of those elements from what got them to the page to the landing page or the squeeze page itself, it's just going to be less jarring for that customer.
Because you don't want to have this real separation between what the colors and pictures and words on the ad were to what was on the landing page, because it breaks trust, right?
Yes.
So like I clicked on this ad about this really cool offer, and then I go to the web page and it looks like it's about something entirely different. And the colors are different, the pictures are different, what they're saying is different, and now I don't understand.
And even if it's on a subconscious level, it doesn't feel familiar anymore. And if it feels different, then it's jarring for that person who came over. And a disconnect between how the visitor got to you and your squeeze page is going to 100% reduce your conversion. Yeah. Well, maybe not 100%, but it will definitely reduce your conversion. Yeah. And this is extra super important if you're driving traffic to your squeeze page through social. With social, you have usually a static visual or a video, something that person's clicked on to come over to your page. You really need to make sure that your design elements, your copy, your images, your theme matches between those two mediums. Use of logo, again, color, design. Yeah. You want to make sure that when they come over to your next page, your squeeze page, that they go, oh, okay. Well, I just saw this 2 seconds ago, and this is where I need to be. And
so, if you go to the show notes for this podcast, or you go to our blog post, you'll see some examples that we've pulled from the internet, different ads and squeeze pages that we said, hey, look at this. This you did a really congruency good job. Worked really well. Yeah.
All right, our final number 8.
Oh my goodness, we're finally there.
All right, so this one is interesting. So when you're doing a squeeze page, you kind of need to keep them hostage. It sounds a little rough and tumble, but the main thing is you don't want to give this person that's come over to your squeeze page anything to do but give you your email address.
And this is a hard one. This is a hard one for a lot of new marketers to absorb. I know when Andrea was first introduced to this concept, she really resisted it. I said, well, we're going to create this page and it's just going to do this one thing. And she goes, well, what if I want more information? What if I want to go to the homepage? What if I want to do this? I go, no. I'm not going to let you do any of that. I only want you to give me your email address. And she goes, well, I wouldn't sign up for this because I want to know more information. And she really resisted. And I said, well, the problem is if you give them navigatable ways to get away from the offer, they will. They'll go away. They'll say, oh, well, I do want to do more research. I want to find out if this person's knows about this other thing, like if they're a dog trainer, do they also train cats, or can they make my fish flip? And so well, let me go look at their other services on the page, and let me look at their pricing structure, and let me see their other testimonials, and let me go look at their social platforms. And once they've gone off into this wild, wanderous journey into who you are and what you do, they're going to be further and further from making that decision you want them to make. And so you want to limit their choice, their ability to leave. The only thing you want them to be able to do is take your offer. So if it's for a training book, or if it's for a course, or if it's for a product or a service or whatever it is, you want them to just complete that action, and that action only. If there's anything else you think they need to know, put it on the page, just add it, further down the page.
Further down the fold. Yeah, and I think that was kind of the most important concept for me, because it's true. I am I'm a suspicious user when it comes to, I don't give up my email address to hardly anyone, even though I work in an industry that ultimately is driven by that. Probably more so because I'm very cautious to give up contact information. And you really have to sell me hard before I do that next step. And so I do require a lot of nurturing and engagement before I'm willing to do that. But if I'm on a squeeze page that doesn't necessarily let me navigate off that squeeze page, but does let me scroll down and see a testimonial video, or a video showing the product in action, or product reviews from reliable sources. All of these elements for me as a user are important, but again, you're going to want to go back to your audience analysis and your customer personas. Am I your target customer? Someone who is hesitant to give up an email address and really needs a lot of convincing and coddling before you'll get that commitment? Then you are going to be looking at a more lengthy squeeze page. But if you're someone like Ryan who just wants to get in and out and wants to see what it is you're offering and goes, yeah, okay, that information's useful, then you want to go with a real short and brief offer. And your squeeze pages should be linked to who you're marketing to in order to get them, through your customer personas. You want to drive that specific customer persona to a squeeze page that's going to speak to them in particular.
Yeah.
So you're not going to just have one squeeze page that's going to work for every page on your site, for every user that comes over, for every ad or social-led user that comes over to you. You're going to have several offers, several squeeze pages, because just because someone doesn't take you up on one offer doesn't mean that they wouldn't take you up on a different offer on a different page. So you're going to have offers on your blog pages. You're going to have offers on your, maybe not your homepage, but a lot of people do.
Oh, yeah.
Where,
if you go to Weight Watchers right now, they've got a little opt-in form right there, where you can gather information right there, and they're obviously speaking to women, and they show a before state and an after state. So you'll see obviously someone with some weight issues, and then somebody who's super skinny and looking happy. Yeah. So. Yeah. Keep in mind that if you are going after somebody who's more of a gatherer of information rather than somebody who's just looking to just get in and out, you'll get them later on. You don't have to make this squeeze page the only way to convert every visitor, right? Kind of like what you're saying. It's not just designing your homepage or your squeeze page around each persona. It's also designing the entire campaign around each persona, right?
Yes.
So somebody like you, I might have 2 or 3 touch points before you're ready to convert, where I've sent you some you've seen me on Facebook where I've talked about this particular thing that I want to sell you. And then the second time you might see an educational piece on how it works. And then you might see another one that says, here's 10 people that really enjoyed it and they've gotten really great benefits. And then on that fourth final hit, you might go, okay, fine, here's my email address. Whereas it could take 2 seconds.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So, but ultimately when it comes to the squeeze page itself, the idea is not to give a lot of navigatable ways for them to get off that page, because if you're talking to me, I'm going to be leaving looking for more stuff just because you gave me the option to look for those additional pieces. If I don't have enough information on your squeeze page and I'm not going to give you my email address, I'm just not going to until I get more information. I'm going to seek that information out. But if you make it too easy for me to do so, I will probably go there even if I would have otherwise given you my email address. So make it very specific. The only thing they can do is give you their email, not your email, their email address.
Get your offer for their email.
Yes. Okay. So now you just basically all you got to do is get started.
Yeah, go
Get some
out
more
there,
leads.
get converting. So that's it for today. Once again, I'm Ryan Eldridge.
And I'm Andrea Eldridge.
And thanks for tuning into Growth Marketer Academy.
Make sure you head over to squirreldigitalmarketing.com/podcast to see the detailed post with links and screenshots.
And if you learned something today, make sure you take a minute and review us on whatever platform you're either listening or watching us on, so we can get some feedback and see how we're doing. And if you have any questions, if there's a comment section, please feel free to ask us whatever questions you want or anything you want us to focus on
In a future episode?
In a future episode.
Yep. All right, guys. See you next time. This has been Growth Marketer Academy with Ryan and Andrea Eldridge.